Hello, everyone. Greetings and welcome to this session on aspects and elements of functional grammar. And a warm greeting to all my dear students and the English language enthusiasts to this informative session based on functional grammar. I am Dr. Disha Vidyarthi, Assistant Professor of English Language and Professional Communication from IIMT College of Science and Technology, Greater Noida. So let us start this session on functional grammar, aspects and elements of functional grammar. Now, see, before we start this session on functional grammar, we all know that since our childhood, we have been studying the grammatical structures, how the language is formed, starting from the alphabet, then forming words, and then framing those words into sentences, applying all the rules of grammar. But there is a thin line and a difference between the traditional or the oriental grammar structure and the functional grammar. So before we understand the elements and aspects of the functional grammar, let us have a brief introduction of exactly what functional grammar signifies. A linguistic approach known as functional grammar places an emphasis on the communicative functions and meanings of language in a variety of circumstances, paying more attention to how language is used for certain goals than just its structural elements. So we can see that functional grammar focuses more on the communicative aspects and the empirical add-ons of that grammar structure. It means it is not just the structural value of the grammar which we see in the traditional or the oriental grammar structure, that studying the rules and how the sentences are structured based on the tenses and the word formulation, sentence formulation, and different kinds of rules, which as we see in the mathematics as well. So functional grammar is not just about the structural value of that language, not the set rules or the core grammatical rules. It is much more than any structure of any language. It is the communicative, the empirical, and the practical aspect of that language. That is functional grammar. Functional means what? It means we are able to do something. So functional grammar enables the learner to use it more frequently in different setups. So functional grammar is basically enabling the learners using the language criterion in the functional aspect, in the doable aspects. Now, see, why is it important to understand the difference between the traditional and functional grammar? And what is the relevance of it, how we should be learning it, what is the outcome when we try to understand the functional grammar of any given language? Because we are studying English, so we can understand all these perspectives under the domain of English language. So let us see why it is important. Learning functional grammar is significant for its contributions to effective communication, contextual understanding, adaptation to diverse linguistic contexts, and overall improvement in language proficiency and critical thinking skills. Now, see, if we can see in this whole definition, we have not uttered this thing that the grammatical rules, because functional grammar enables the learners for the effective communication, the proficiency they will be gaining, because functional grammar is much more or beyond the grammatical structures and rule. It does not focuses it does not focus on that you have to write correctly, you have to apply the all the appropriate bit by bit rules of the grammar. It focuses more on the functional value of it, how you can be speaking in that language, how you're able to express your ideas, how you're able to make that interpersonal relationships in those contexts, in the cross cultural settings. So there is the role of functional grammar, that apart from the grammatical structure and rule of that language, you're able to apply those in the practical situation. So that is the one main difference between the traditional grammar and the functional grammar. Let's move on to the next thing. Now, to understand this, a whole setup of traditional and functional grammar, because a lot many people say that grammar is grammar. What is the difference? Why we are saying it traditional grammar or the functional grammar? Now let us see the differences on different or four different criteria, so that we can understand it better, that what is that difference which marks a thin line between the whole concept of traditional grammar and functional grammar. Now see, type of differences. First one is primary concern. Now see, what is the primary concern in traditional grammar and functional? So number one, it is that how is it mean how the sentence should be structured. That is the main focus or the goal or the aim in the traditional grammar, because it solely or mainly focuses on that is the sentence, the text has to be grammatically correct bit by bit. So they will focus on how the sentences are structured, because eventually those correct sentences will form the part of that whole text. Now in functional grammar, how are the meanings of this text realized? So you see the difference. In functional grammar, the focus is shifted towards how the meanings are interpreted, how the ideas are expressed, and then how the meanings are interpreted of that communication, out of that communication, how the interaction goes through the written words or through the oral communication. Now see, unit of analysis. When on the basis of both the grammars, when we analyze that text or the spoken words, in traditional grammar, that unit of analysis is sentences. First we have to put the for all the formats and the words in the correct criteria of the grammatical rules, and the correct sentences formed, and eventually those correct sentences sum up in a whole or the larger text. So sentence is the main unit of analysis in the traditional grammar. The first focus is the sentence, that is the sentence correct or not, and then the cluster of those sentences form the longer text. Now see, in functional grammar, the attention is on the whole of the text. It is not that whether this sentence was correct, that sentence was correct. The whole meaning, the whole text as a comprehensive element is analyzed. It is not just we have to, in functional grammar, we do not break that whole text or the that communication part or that conversation into chunks of sentence and then analyzing whether this sentence was wrong or correct, grammatically correct or wrong, appropriate or not. In functional grammar, the whole text is analyzed as a whole, as one comprehensive unit. Now, on the level of language level concern, in traditional grammar, it is the syntax. It means, are the words, are the sentences following that trail of grammatical rule? How, whether the formation of verb, the placement of verb, the subject verb agreement, these kinds of formation and the syntax is more important in traditional grammar. On the other hand, we see in functional grammar, the meaning is very, very important. The focus is not just on the grammatical setup of that text or the structure. In functional grammar, the semantic, it means the meaning portion is very, very important, whether the speaker or the writer has expressed him or herself in a well aware manner, because his or her focus is more that the meaning should be understood by the person on the other hand. So in traditional grammar, syntax is more important. In functional grammar, the semantic, it means the meaning is very, very important or the primary concern. Now the fourth criteria we see, the language in traditional grammar is something we know is that as a set of rules for sentence correction. So in traditional grammar, you see the learners of language, they start learning from the basic elements, alphabets, then forming words, and then putting those words in a sentence following the grammatical rules. Where should be the verb, where should be the helping verb, what are the parts of those sentences, the like phrase, like clauses, what is subject, predicate. So all these little technicalities gradually they grow, and then you get into the core or the little bit difficult structure of the grammatical rules and following that. So this is the language concern in traditional grammar. The set of rules, how you form the sentence, the set of rule is very, very important in traditional grammar. But in functional grammar, it is as a resource of making meaning. In functional grammar, language is not just a set of rules. It is more of a tool to communicate, more of a tool to make a good interaction, effective communication. So the meaning portion, the understanding portion is more relevant or is having significance in the functional grammar, the communicative and the interactive aspect of the language. Now let's move on to the next segment. Now see, after understanding those key differences between the functional grammar and the traditional grammar, there is one aspect also which is attached to both of these grammar structures. Is one is structural and other one is practical. So structural value is associated with the traditional grammar, and practical values associated with the functional grammar. Now, if you can see on screen, there's a ladder formed of language learning or understanding that language. In a traditional grammar, the language ladder is from upside down. First, the roots and the affixes, then the words, then how the groups and the phrases are formed, then the clauses, and then sentence, and then the whole text. It means it is from the increasing order. Okay, step by step, and then you have climbed the ladder. On the contrary, in functional grammar, if you can see on the screen on the other side, you will say the flow is down. It means the primary concern in functional grammar is the whole text. The comprehension is important. The whole text is important. The meaning is important. The meaning which is derived from the by the listener and the writer or the speaker is more important. So it is the downward motion. In functional grammar, it is a downward motion because meaning. How will you derive the meaning when you see the whole communication as a whole picture, not just breaking it into chunks? So there is the structural value associated with the traditional grammar, where from the beginning, from words to phrases to clauses and sentences, and gradually you climb the ladder and then comes the whole text. On the opposite, in the functional grammar, the whole text is seen, and then you can break that text into chunks from words, clauses, phrase, and so on. So it is like the language ladder in both the functional and traditional grammar is just opposite. One is upside down and other is from upwards to the downwards. Now, after the structural and practical value, which are one key features of traditional and functional, it means structural is associated with traditional and practical is associated with functional grammar. Now, see, there are lot many. There have been lot many linguists who have given a lot of theories, but one functional grammar theory was given by Michael Halliday, which is very popularly known as systematic functional grammar, that is SFG. It talks about that how apart from the grammatical rules or the structure, there are different elements to the language which forms the functional grammar aspects of that given language. Now if you can see the flowchart on the screen, first there is socio-culture environment. It means whenever we are acquiring any language, in that language acquisition or conversing in that language, communicating in that language, the socio-culture environment is very very important, because as we said that functional grammar is something more than the rules. So apart from being grammatically correct, apart from applying all those set rules, it is also important that the one function which of language is that you need to communicate effectively. And we when we want to communicate effectively, we have to pay attention and give significance and relevance to the socio-cultural environment as well, because when the socio-culture background changes, the people changes, the cultural habits changes, dialect changes, a lot many things in your language uses changes, and that is one part of functional grammar, that it gives that background, it takes that background of socio-culture environment. There comes a genre, because it will create a difference in your communication when when you'll be paying attention to the background, the context of that communication, whom you are speaking, what you are speaking, which kind of setup you are speaking, it is formal, informal, different kind of socio-culture elements will give a lot of different colors to that communication, different usage or to that language. Now register, after when you after considering the socio-culture environment, when you initiate any kind of conversation, be it in written or spoken form, there come the register. Register means how the person is speaking and how that conversation is being perceived and registered by the another person whom you are speaking. And on three levels they are. It is field, tenor, and mode, which we'll be discussing in the next slide. And then the discourse semantic. Discourse semantic means the meaning value of that conversation. Supposedly, one may be grammatically very, very correct, but that meaning is not transparently send out to the other person. Then it means it is just the grammatical appropriate structures, but the meaning value of that communication, of that interaction has droop down. Why? Because in functional grammar, the main aspect which differentiates this functional grammar from the traditional one is that the semantic aspect of the language is very very important. The meaning, how it is, and the meaning, how is it derived, it is very very important. Ideational, it means how you perceive those ideas, how you express those ideas, how your interpersonal and textual relationships are. The interpersonal, it means person to person or inside out, and textual, it means how you present that whole conversation, be it written or in the oral form. Now see, systematic functional grammar is a linguistic theory developed by Michael Halliday. It is also known as systematic functional linguistics, SFL. SFG is a comprehensive theory that focuses on the way language functions in communication. emphasizing both the forms, grammar and the function. It means grammar and meaning is very, very important in functional grammar. It tries to create a balance somewhere between applying the rules and also paying attention on the core value of the meaningfulness of that language, because deriving meaning expressing the ideas and conversation in your conversation is the one main aspect of functional grammar. You cannot be sticking just back to the grammatical structures and rules, and yet you are unable to communicate independently and logically. Now see, here are some key features and concepts associated with systematic functional grammar. Let us see. Now see, the framework or the dimension of functional grammar theory, as we discussed of the Halliday, the 3 pointers which we just discussed in the previous slide, that was field, tenor and mode. Now, as in the beginning, we started with the key differences between the, or the thin line between the traditional grammar and the functional grammar, was that traditional grammar is more structure basis, and functional grammar is more of practical basis. Now, when we try to apply any language after the acquisition on the practical basis, three things are very, very important. Number one is field. It means what is the subject matter of the text means it can be written, or the text means it means the thing which you are speaking, or orally if you are conversing. Field is very, very important. What kind of topic, what kind of theory, what kind of idea, what kind of expression you want to give away to the other person or the second party of your communication. So field is very, very important. It means what is very, very important. But this thing you may find missing in the traditional grammar, because it will not focus what you're saying. It focuses on whatever is said, it should be said correctly. Whatever is written, it should be written correctly. The correctness and the appropriateness of the grammatical rule is of higher importance in the traditional grammar. But in functional grammar, the things changes if the field changes, if the subject matter changes. Now see, the next is tenor. Who? It means to whom you're going to convey that, to whom you're going to with whom you're going to have words. That interpersonal relation, that relationship with the listener, that relationship with the speaker, that relationship with the reader or the writer is very, very important. But in traditional grammar, it is not important. You have to be grammatically correct. It doesn't make a sense for the oriental grammar linguistic that to whom you are saying, because they were in the favor of that whatever you are saying is important, but how you are saying it in the grammatical setup is more important. Because if grammatically you are correct, doesn't make a sense to whom you are saying. Okay, like 1 plus 1 is 2. It is as simple as that. Okay, there is no more further analysis in traditional grammar. Now is mode. The third element which is associated with the functional grammar theory is that mode refers to the text construction, looking at whether it is based on written or spoken forms of communication. This creates a lot of difference in functional grammar. The mode creates a lot of difference in functional grammar. How? Because for example, you have written one, if you are asked to frame one interrogative question, you will write like are you going? So you have put the helping verb in the starting of the sentence, you have put question mark at the end of the sentence, and grammatically you have formed one question, are you going? Now suppose you are having a very casual conversation or a telephonic conversation with someone, and then you just said you are going, you're going. Now you have not put the grammatically correct formula of placing the helping verb in the starting of the sentence or putting out a question mark, though it was a oral conversation. But the tone you have, in the tone you have said, it has clearly given the idea to the listener that you are asking a question. Why? Because the mode was that you are having oral conversation, you are having a telephonic conversation. So just by changing a little tone in because on the basis of the mode, the meaning is derived correctly, though it was not grammatically correct. You haven't said it grammatically correct, but because of the tone and because of the mode you have selected, just by the tone you have conveyed the meaning. The meaning was conveyed, that the person understood that you are asking, you're not making any statement, you are just asking the question. So in functional grammar, the feel, it means the what, tenor, it means the who, and mode, it means the how. These three elements, what, who, how, is more important in functional grammar theory, rather than just focusing on the grammatical set pattern rules of the language. Now there are three meta functions on the basis of this theory of language. that these are the three meta functions which are associated with any language acquisition. Now see what are these meta functions of language which you will found which you will be finding in any of the language acquisition, be it English, Hindi, any regional language or any third language. Now see experiential meta function. Now what is experiential meta function? It is concerned with the representation of experiences, events and states of affairs. It deals with the content or the what of the communication. Now experiential it means the same thing can be expressed in different manners by the different people. Why? Because the language is the tool of expression, but it also gives different kinds of experiences to different kind of people based on the situation, and those different experiences are delivered and expressed differently. So the people will be using different words, the people will be using different expressions, the mode will be different, the treatment of that language will be different. So one meta function is experiential meta function of that language. How you perceive it can be different, varying on the aspects of different individuals. Now the second one is interpersonal meta function. It focuses on the social aspects of the language, dealing with how speakers and listeners interact, express attitude and establish relationship. So establishing relationship is one of the aspect of functional grammar. Why? Because it will add the value of effective interaction and communication, which is devoid which you will not be finding in traditional grammar structure. Why? Because it focuses more on what? It focuses more on the grammatical structure, the set pattern, the rules. But in functional grammar, the interpersonal relationships, how you are expressing, how the listener is perceiving, how you are getting the replies, it will set a course for your conversation. So that interpersonal value is also one of the meta function under this functional grammar theory. And the third one is textual meta function that involves the organization and coherence of discourse, examining how language is structured to find a meaningful conversation. So the textual value, as in the initial slides we studied this reference, that in traditional grammar it will pay more focus on the syntax, not the meaning aspect. But in functional grammar, the meaning, the comprehension, the whole text as a whole, you have to see the conversation or the text as a whole, not breaking it into sentence structure following just the grammatical rules. Now let's see further. Now, to sum up this thing, that as we started the session with the basic differences between the traditional grammar and the functional grammar, it is important to know that while these concepts provide a foundation for understanding English functional grammar, effective language use also involve practice and exposure to authentic language in various contexts. Now, see, reading, writing, and engaging with English in real life situations will contribute significantly to developing a practical understanding and functional grammar. Now, see, why this name is functional grammar? Function, it means something doable, doing something, practical aspect. So, in traditional grammar, it is like you can learn grammatical rules, you can be politically correct, you can be grammatically correct, you are framing. Framed sentences, and eventually the text, you are following bit by bit each and every rule of grammar. Yet you may face difficulty in having very smooth and effective communication. Why? Because in functional grammar there are lexicogrammar also, when there is the aspect of in enhancing the vocabulary, because enhancing vocabulary will add the practical value to your communication. Why? Because uh, by using just one word or the set of words in some set grammatical structure, you can be correct or you can convey your meaning. But for effective communication, you have to broaden your canvas, you have to involve lot many other things apart from the grammatical rules, and there come the role of functional grammar, where you have to work on your socio-cultural aspects, where you have to work on the interpersonal relationships, where you have to work of enhancing your vocabulary, that where comes the role of lexicogrammar, where the combination of different words and their relationships with the different syntax pattern is workable. So how you can enhance your functional grammar? By when you will be using those rules, those the patterns of that language in the real life situations. It is not just that on a pen or paper you have written everything and then you are well versed in that language. No, there comes the role of functional grammar, moving ahead of the traditional grammar and then going out in the ground and on the ground reality in the practical situation, giving the different context. You will realize that the context changes, your tone changes, your mood changes, and the treatment of that language changes. So functional grammar is the aspect of conveying the meaning, understand the meaning, and then using the elements of lexicogrammar, and then enhancing the practical value and the usable value of that language. There comes the roles of functional grammar. Use it more and you will learn it more. And the two more points which are important in understanding this theory is that coherence and cohesion. These are two elements very deeply associated with language usage or any language, because these two elements, if are not there in your language usage, it means you will be definitely facing difficulty in having smooth communication, be it written or oral. Number one is coherence. Now, see what is coherent. The ways a text makes sense to readers and writers through the relevance and accessibility of its configuration of concepts, ideas, and theory. It means it is like a chain. You have to link each and every thought process, each and every idea of yours which you want to express. There has to be a link. It is like a chain. If the chain is broken, the whole strength is gone. So coherence means you are using the ideas which you want to express, you have to put them in certain order so that there is a link and a chain, making it one comprehensive piece of text, if even if you are speaking or you are writing. So that coherence, it means and that meaning should be accessible to the reader or to the listener when you have placed everything in a chain order, when there is a link in between. That is coherent. That link between the ideas and the meanings and how they are expressed, that is the coherence. Now, second element which is associated with the language acquisition and the functional grammar theory is cohesion. Now, the grammatical and the lexical relationship, it means related to the words, different kinds of the lexical relationship between different elements of a text which hold it together. Now, see, you have seen that a lot many times your instructor or the English teachers or the people who guide you in having a better command over that language, they ask you to build your vocabulary. Why? Using like one word also you can express in different situation, you can use the same word because it means the same thing. But when you use different kinds of word associated with the grammatical rules, it gives a different color to your communication. Like if something is good, you can use the word good or nice. But if you're having a bank of words, like if you're having wonderful, gorgeous, excellent, lot many things, okay, fantastic, so one feeling and different words, it means this, there's come the role of functional grammar under the domain of a lexical relationship between the words and their setup. So that cohesion will come when you will be using these kinds of vocabulary building things, different kinds of words, and you will form a relationship between the using different words with the correct grammatical structures. So there is a balance in cohesion. There is a balance between the lexicogrammar and the traditional grammar. There comes the lexicogrammar where you use different kinds of words and yet you have that different syntax. It is not that you are using different words, you have used beautiful and varied ornamental language, but there is no link or connection between in the sentences or between the words. So in cohesion you have to put everything in order with the beautiful words, with the understanding of lexical setup of that language. That is the lexical relationship between different elements of a text which hold it together. So whenever you try to make your communication effective, always keep it in mind, you have to be your that text or your communication has to be very coherent, so that the person on the other hand can understand what you're expressing and how you're expressing it. And cohesion, it means you can give a different color to your communication when you are having a good intact and hold on thing with the lexicogrammar. So yes, this was the session, and in the next session we will be having a lot more other elaborative aspects of the English language and professional communication. Till then, have a good day. Thank you, everyone.